everyone. My name is Angela Easterling, and welcome to the first of my series, Experience, Strength, and Hope Community Acupuncture. This video is my attempt to get the information out to the world about community acupuncture. It is hands down one of my favorite tools. You're probably wondering, oh, she must be an acupuncturist. I'm not. I'm a substance use counselor, have been for a very long time, and I am not an acupuncturist. So the good news is that you don't have to be an acupuncturist to be able to learn this specific protocol. Now, you can't use any other protocols, but you can do this specific 5-point protocol. There are some state laws that we need to talk about, but we'll get to that later. What I really want for this channel is to just tell some stories about what I've seen in community acupuncture, talk about some trainings that I've attended, trainings that I've done, how to get trained, how to become a trainer, and all of the things that encompass the community acupuncture. We'll also talk about the two major organizations that kind of oversee people who are getting trained in this protocol. So I became an ADS about, I don't know, 14, 15 years ago. And I worked as an ADS, which is an Acudetox specialist, for a couple of years. And then I just really wanted to become a trainer. And so I reached out to my mentor, the person that I trained with, and said, would you train me to become a trainer? And we started working together closely. And after about a year and a half, I became a trainer. And I hit the ground running. I was training almost every month, traveling around the United States and doing trainings, and it was a wonderful time. It was so much fun to create the curriculums and to train people. And if you would have told me, 15 years ago that I would be training doctors and nurses and acupuncturists in an acupuncture protocol, I would have said you were, I don't know, telling stories. It wasn't so much that I was teaching them this protocol as I was teaching them about how to be present and to be person-centered. That was a gift that I received and learned working in public health, working with people who had substance use disorder, mental health, things like that. So I really am excited about this video series, and I look forward to answering questions and helping people get connected to the appropriate organization to become an ADS, an Acudetox specialist, or an auricular technician. So basically, you would be learning the 5-point protocol and then being able to take that out into your community. So when I first started, I was living in Nashville, Tennessee. I was working at a treatment center called, we used to call it Treatment Heaven, and it was a drug court treatment center. And I worked on the treatment side. So I was working with our clients. We had about 35 women and about 30 men. And we had them separated into two different spaces within the treatment center. And we did an IOP program from 6 p.m. at night until 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And it was a really hard job, but it was probably one of the most fulfilling jobs I've ever had. And I was just really new. I was still pretty new at this facility. And a woman came in and said, I'm doing group tonight. I'm doing Acudetox. I had no idea what it was. And she told me to pick 12 women and send them back at 7 o'clock to the group. Well, I mentioned it to my group of ladies and everybody's hand went up. All 35 of my women wanted to go and I could only pick 12. So I said, ladies, tell me about this thing that you all want to go to, because I'm going to have to pick 12 of you. And so they went on to tell me that they go into a room that's dimly lit with comfortable chairs and pillows and yoga mats. And the lady, Anne, puts needles in their ears. And I'm like, what? What? And they said it is the best thing that they have ever experienced when it comes to relaxing. They said it's better than yoga. It's better. Like they were just telling me it's better than anything. One girl goes, it's better than getting high. I was like, oh my gosh, like sounds amazing. I picked 12 women and they went back. And then the following week, we had the group again. And so they asked me to send 12 more women back. So this time I had a co-facilitator. So I said, can you cover group? I want to go back and see what this is all about. So I went back and I actually got a treatment. And it was amazing, just like they said. And so I was talking with the lady Anne, who does the treatment, and she's like, I think there's a training coming up. Maybe you should check it out. So I found it, and sure enough, I signed up for the training. It was $500, which was a lot of money to me at that time. Well, it's still a lot of money, but I paid the $500, and it was a 5-day training, 8 hours a day. So I had to take time off from work to go, but I am so glad I did that. And I learned so much. I was very, very intimidated when I got there because there was 15 people in the training and probably 13 of them were actual doctors. And then there were a couple who were social workers. And then I was a substance use counselor, low man on the totem pole. And so I was feeling really kind of intimidated. And at lunchtime, my trainer came up to me and she said, I really would love for you to share more about what you do, because everybody in the room really needs to hear that, because that's what this protocol's for, is for treating people with substance use disorder and mental health conditions. And a lot of these people don't know the first thing about how to work with those people. I really would like you to share more about your experience, strength, and hope. And I was like, oh my gosh, so I am in the right place. And I learned so much at that training. Not to mention, my trainer was a wonderful, wonderful, very, very talented trainer. So it took me about 6 months to finish my clinical practicum, which was treating 40 people, 80 sets of ears. That was family and friends. And then once I did that and I was signed off on, then I could make application with the state. Once you make application with the state, you actually get a license in the state of Tennessee to be an Acudetox specialist. You need to be using the protocol only with people who have substance use disorder and mental health conditions or natural disaster, those kinds of things. You can't just go set up a business and say, hey, I'm an Acudetox specialist, because that's really an acupuncturist, and we are not that when you're just an ADS. So there are rules around how you can use it, who you can use it on, and those kinds of things. And then you have to make application with the state every 2 years. And it's really inexpensive. I think it's $60 every 2 years. And then you have to carry liability insurance, which is $250, and that's the most expensive part of it. And then, of course, your supplies, and we'll get into those in a little bit. But it's a very, very, very easy, cost-effective, simple protocol. And once you get kind of the initial startup out of the way, there's not a lot of cost to it. So I started kind of talking to people and trying to get groups set up in Nashville. And the good news is many of our doctors in Nashville had been trained in the protocol, so I had some support. And I also needed to find somebody that would supervise me. And that needed to be a doctor or an acupuncturist. So that was also a barrier, and also a rule for Tennessee. But I was able to find somebody, and eventually I started doing these groups. They're just an hour long. Basically what I do is I go in about 15 minutes early. I set up the room with my supplies. I set out the chairs, and then I meet people at the door. I have them sign the consent form, and I kind of set the tone for what I want to see in the room. Some of my groups are Zen groups where it's quiet and very mellow and low lighting and groovy music. Some of my groups are more chatty, and so it's really whatever you want. You don't have to have fancy equipment or anything like that. It's very, very simple. And so I just meet people at the door. I have them sign the consent form. They go in, they sit down. Once everybody's in there, I put a little sign on the door that says group in progress, please don't disturb. And then I turn on my music, and I start at one end of the room, and I just start putting in the needles in everybody's ears. And then I sit in the group with the people while they're having their treatment for 45 minutes in silence. But I'm also watching the group, making sure nobody needs anything or isn't having any discomfort, things like that. And then about 10 minutes prior to me getting ready to take the needles out, I go over and I turn my teapot on and I get the tea prepared, and I have a special tea blend that I give to each of the people at the end of the group. And then what I do is I go around and I take out all the needles, one person at a time, put ear seeds in their ears, go to the next person, take their needles out, put ear seeds in their ears. And then when I'm finished, I go over and I get the tea and I pass out the tea to everybody. And we sit for about 5 minutes, maybe 10, in quiet and just have tea together. Now, you probably think this sounds kind of weird, but really, for people who have been living in the world of addiction or who struggle with mental health, sitting in a group of people can be really challenging. And there's a lot of fear that goes into that, and there's a lot of mistrust. And so, one of the first things we're building by doing these groups is trust, and for people to start feeling safe again. So, hands down, the first thing that I really focus on in my groups is creating safety. It is my number one concern, safety in the group. I do my groups the same way every time. So, when people come in, they know exactly what to expect. I don't change things on the fly. I really try to keep it constant and simple so that people can come in and not feel a lot of fussiness. And it's just everybody can be relaxed. I've not had any real major problems, had a couple of incidents, but I was able to manage those, and I'll tell you those in another episode because we're getting close to being finished here. But it's such an easy protocol if you just put a little effort and time into managing your intention, which it's all about the intention. I'm showing up to create safety and space for these clients. I am an agent of transformation. My job is to put the needles in and get out of the way and let their body and themselves do the healing. It is nothing that I'm doing. It is strictly them doing all the work. And that's one of the beautiful things about this protocol. So just quickly, I'm going to go through the supplies and we're going to end this episode. I hope you come back for episode 2. We'll have some stories and talk a little bit more about the organizations. I can treat about 100 people with this little tiny bag. So I can do a group in a park. I can do it in a treatment center. I could do it anywhere. So essentially all I need are some alcohol swabs, some cotton balls, some tweezers, some needles, and something to put my needles in. So when I'm in a big group, I put all my needles into this and then I pour them into a sharps container. And this is just kind of a shuttle from the person to the sharps container. And then these are the ear seeds. So very simple, very simple, very, very simple. These are great needles. They have orange handles so they don't get lost easy. I can treat 100 people with this. So again, next week we're going to talk about different ways that the protocol is being used with different populations. We're going to talk about how to get trained, and we're also going to talk about state laws. So I hope you come back and join me. I will see you again next Wednesday for episode 2. Be well, my friends. Take care.